Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today. Today's topic is the intersection of the future of work and return to office. Look, both of these topics we've discussed enough times around. The future of work is changing, and we know that as we've gone through the pandemic, that work has fundamentally come to be redistributed and the blueprint itself has evolved. We've also learned a lot about the collective intelligence and creative energy and how to get that going in this distributed work environment. And so there's great lessons that have come out of that body of experience that we'd like to find a way to take forward. On the other hand, many of us are right now in the process of returning to work or returning to office, I should say. And that whole RTO mechanism, left it unattended can just be, hey, let's just go back to where we were. But the reality is that's an opportunity lost. And many of you have commented on this, and there is a purposeful desire to be thoughtful about how we RTO, how we return to the office. And really to explore the intersection of this future to work and the lessons we've learned and the RTO and the return to office that needs to happen, I want to invite someone that I have a lot of respect for, that has spent a lot of time on this topic to help us think through that. And that's Gianni Giacomelli. Now, some of you may have met Gianni before. Gianni's based in Berlin, and he's Genpact's Chief Innovation Officer. And as a part of that, he spends a lot of time thinking through Genpact's evolution as a company and the innovation we need to drive in both our clients, but within ourselves. He also spends time with the MIT Center for Collective Intelligence and collaborates with the industry and academia at large to really think through new innovative models. And I thought, what a perfect intersection and what a timely topic. And so with that, Gianni, welcome from Berlin, and thank you for joining us today.
Hey, Sanjay, how are you?
Great to have you here, Gianni. And so without any more introduction, I'm just going to jump into the heart of the topic. Gianni, one of the things I got a glimpse of as you and I spoke is the framework you're thinking about that is really applicable to this kind of here and now moment. Talk to us a little bit about this framework of returning to office and the future of work.
So thanks for the question. Really, you read the press, a bunch of this, there's a lot of coverage. I actually don't like what I see. I see that people are kind of moving towards a consensus where there's going to be some work from home, maybe 1 to 3 days, depending on the jobs, a lot more Zoom, a lot more Microsoft Teams, better offices, more convivial, more social, less cubicles. I think that's a problem. I think we got to see the offices for what they are, which are collaboration technologies, thousands of years old, right? Most offices are not the Apple's Cupertino offices. And the problem with that is that they've been crowding out newer collaboration technologies. And it just took us a pandemic to discover how to collaborate in a completely different way. So I do think that there's a risk of incrementalizing again as we get people back into the office. That's the reason why, thinking about what the work that has been done at the MIT Center for Collective Intelligence, especially network dynamics, right? How do you think about networks of people in large environments? How do they connect with each other in an optimal way? And also employee experience, right? The design of that. Some of our colleagues at RightPoint, for example, do that. So how do you bring it together? So
one second, Gianni. So this is very interesting, right? Because you've said the things we've learned, and said it took us a pandemic to learn this, but really your key points are these two, right? This experience becomes a big component, and office and co-working, and how do you think about collaboration? Are those the two? What are the two biggest learnings as we've sort of lived through this pandemic, from your point of view?
So I think a bunch of people didn't actually even think that this was possible. And actually they thought that it was possible, but it would come at an incredible cost from a people standpoint, right? We just go crazy, right? Cabin fever, it's like sending people to Mars, 9 months in the size of your toilet, right? It's just, it's true, but it's not fully true, right? So I think we need to learn a lot from what worked well and take it into the future.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So we didn't plan for it. We got thrown into it. We learned a lot of things through the mechanism. There's some great things that have come out of it. To your point, we need to take it into the future. What does that framework look like? How do we come back to work?
I think
come back to work, come back to office.
Come back to office. I think it's all about intentionality. And I think about this as you think of a cube across 3 dimensions. So you remember Rubik cube, the small ones, for the kids, right? It's a 2 by 2 by 2. It's a very small Rubik cube. And we got to do design at the intersection of those 3 dimensions. The first dimension is physical versus virtual. So it's physical interactions happen in a different way compared to virtual interactions. And I actually would dare to say that there's something in between that they call phygital. For example, Zoom rooms are an example of phygital. There's people in person and there's people remote. They all share a same space. The second dimension is synchronous versus asynchronous. Offices are mostly synchronous stuff, except when you have posters on walls, etc., or physical bulletin boards, right? If they still exist. Asynchronous is eating the world. It's the knowledge from the threads of your Microsoft Teams, of your Slack, etc. A lot of the knowledge, a lot of the brain of the companies or organizations is discharged there. The third dimension, which most people actually don't think of, which comes directly from the work of collective intelligence, is strong ties versus weak ties. Strong tie connections between people. So the two of us, for example, we talk all the time. Those are functional, people work together, they have an objective, they properly organizationally structured in a way that stuff is resilient to shocks. We meet, right? The weak ties are the problem. Those are the serendipitous encounters in the corridor, in the canteen, and they are so incredibly important for innovation and culture formation. And the problem with them is that they do dwindle in shocks, right? So you end up with losing them. There's no water cooler anymore. Oh, I don't need to see that person. Actually, I don't remember seeing that person. It's very problematic. We need to design intentionally, work with each of the dimensions and really the intersection of those dimensions.
So that's fantastic, right? I mean, I love your analogy of a Rubik's Cube, because I think about a three-dimensional cube. You're saying there's one dimension of the physics of meeting in person versus virtually. You're saying the second dimension is all about the synchronous. So it's the timing, is synchronous versus asynchronous. And you're saying the third dimension is the dimension of intentional and incidental, or the weak ties versus the known strong ties. And we've got to balance all three of those dimensions and draw out sort of this Rubik's Cube, if you will. So we figure out how each of us, for what part of our job, for which days of the week, fall in which cell. And that becomes the framework you use as you think about returning to the office. Did I get that right?
That's exactly right.
But Gianni, look, I mean, that's amazing, right? I mean, if that's the framework and all of this learning's behind us, I mean, surely that's going to have a profound impact in the way we work. And I just want to kind of, while I have you on this session, just get your thoughts on where we headed with all this. What's around the corner, and how's the world we live in and work in going to change as you see it?
I think there are profound implications. I'll give you 3 examples, and I really want to think about very practically how do we get people mobilized tomorrow, teams, to do those work streams and get teams aligned to it and get it done. So I'll probably overweight a little bit on the weak ties, because I think they are an orphan. Most people don't even think about that, and that's a real risk, right? So the first example I give you is phygital, which is this hybrid of digital and physical, synchronous, and the weak ties. Think of the office space of the future. It's going to be a lot more convivial, but my bet is you will actually start seeing situations in which you're going to have wormholes, literally walls of glass in which on the other side, you're going to see another office. Your canteen in Palo Alto is going to be connected to the canteen in New York City, and it's just a wall of glass. And on the other side, there's going to be people in New York, and on this side, there's going to be people in Palo Alto, and they can actually see each other, and maybe they can talk to each other, right? So some of that, increasingly, the bandwidth is not a problem, etc. So think of that first dimension. The second one is asynchronous. As I said, to me, is the biggest thing that is going to happen in the weak ties that create knowledge, but they don't talk to each other. They actually talk to the knowledge, and they drop the knowledge. So corpus of knowledge, the corpora of knowledge, threads, chats, transcripts of videos, including the videos of sessions in person. Microsoft have made a big bet, Viva Topics, the knowledge graphs. They're going to be able to go into that corpus of knowledge and make it really consumable. In the future, things like transformers, OpenAI, GPT-3, you will be able to query those in natural language, almost like you were talking to a human. Right? Imagine that you don't really need to do a search. You actually can talk to that thing, and that thing will bring out everything is found. So that's the second example. The third example is, again, weak ties, now synchronous and virtual. We have this concept, and then, Sanjay, we just launched this thing that we call the water cooler. So it's a virtual environment that is supposed to boost the neural structure of our collective supermind, right? What I call augmented collective intelligence. And what it does, it analyzes the network structure of a big network of a company. It looks at every individual person's weak ties, and it tries to create moments of serendipitous encounters with those people by just using a bot to schedule those meetings in a way that you don't need to think about it. But people will show up on your calendar. Obviously, you have your preferences to choose. So it's available for our colleagues as of today. It will soon be available for our clients, but I do think that kind of thing will create the experience of the future in the future of work.
I love what you're saying, and this is a group of digital practitioners across the globe, and we talked about a few of these things. But I think what I'm hearing from you is, look, office space as we know it will fundamentally change. It's going to be a combination of virtual and physical, and the way things look will have to evolve, and we need to drive that. And the second thing I got of it is don't undervalue or don't underestimate the value of asynchronous communication, and actively, aggressively, proactively build that into your employee engagement, into your internal engagement plans. And I love what you said about the third point, which is AI and the whole graph database and the neural net and the ability to harvest these weak links in programmatic, thoughtful, purposeful manner to be able to create that collective wisdom and the creative energy that's really required at the end of the day to innovate, to progress. And those three topics, AI, the thoughtful utilization of space, and asynchronous versus synchronous communication, I think are top of mind for most of us, and many of us have thought through it. But that's great and fantastic insight, Gianni. I just want to thank you for taking the time and joining us from Berlin. And I'm going to turn to the audience and say thanks for joining in. Gianni is obviously on LinkedIn with us, so feel free to write directly or through this channel, and I'm sure we'll get a great conversation going. Thank you, and take care.
Thank you, Sanjay.